Given the historical perspective, LDC has not always been there. LDC came into being in 1970. Yet before LDC came into being, Uganda was producing lawyers.
I won't negotiate. I won't talk about anything about how LDC should improve, how LDC should be disbanded. That thing should be removed. And I think it's, I don't know why they are keeping it there, but maybe for their own purpose. It should be.
Having these many problems because of that monopoly. That because of the monopoly, they are maybe not, you know how competition makes people work, yeah. And that's not there at LDC, because at the end of the day, you have to go to LDC, whether you agree with them, whether you disagree, yeah.
LDC is the only institution in Uganda that offers the bar course leading to the award of the postgraduate diploma in legal practice for any lawyer that wants to become an advocate of court.
The then minister, the late Nkambo Mugerwa, instead invited young fresh graduates from Cambridge, I think he had studied there, to write the blueprint of the Law Development Center. But they knew very little about Uganda law, about our local circumstances. So they actually consulted us. They consulted the lecturers at Makerere as to what to put in that one.
The main route to practicing law in Uganda is having the LLB and the postgraduate diploma in legal practice from LDC. That is the main route for practice. And whether you want to be an advocate, whether you want to be a state attorney in government, whether you want to be a magistrate in the courts, a judge, you must have that qualification.
In 2017-2018 and 2019-2020 academic years, the undergraduates were caught in a dark cloud of overwhelming failure rates, the first of its kind in the history of the LDC.
Media was awash with a failure rate of more than 90%. That wasn't true. It was not true that 90% of that class had failed. That 90% failure rate, when it was reported, what wasn't reported was that there were no marks to show for that. And I always wondered how we can talk about a failure rate without results. By the time results came out, which was a long time after graduation, it was actually discovered that not all the 90% failed. Some had passed, but the system didn't capture that. Some were marked in an improper way. Some, their marks were not calculated properly. So in the end, when some of us looked through our papers and stuff, in the end, that percentage rate is well lower than 90% now.
If people fail exam, a pass mark can be at 20. Yes. So, but what's the scheme of the center is to limit, cut the number. When you fail them, some of them will get frustrated and they go to farming. Others will move out of the country. Others will go to jail. So you retain some few, then you bring them to the market, so that the market does not depress. So it's a form of hoarding of legal practitioners.
Now, some of those who say they had originally failed but now have been found to have passed, actually LDC took a decision that everybody who has at least 48.5% shall be compensated and made to pass with 50. So very many students were in that range, marginal failures, 49, 49.5, 48.7, they were there.
Beside the failure rates, the quality of advocates is also in question. And who is to blame?
No, LDC is not the problem. You have to go backwards. Actually, for us, we've always said you have to start with the universities. And the universities say for them, they're not the problem. You have to start with the secondary schools. The secondary schools take you to primary. Primary, say nursery. So, I don't know, we might need to re-examine what are we teaching? What are the products in our education system? What are the standards that we are aspiring to?
But why should LDC be a mandatory requirement, yet in the past, there was no LDC and people were effectively represented in courts of law by law?
So, one cannot say there must be LDC. We have had instances where there hasn't been an LDC.
Those lawyers of the time, the Vinaisas, did it too. And did Vinaisa go to LDC? But they were here. They were advocates. They went to UK and they did clerkship with other lawyers. They learned how to do it. Did Yodoki Benjamin do LDC? I don't think he did it. Because it was... So it is... They're just cooking up things to limit the number so that legal services remain scarce. And when they scarce, they remain expensive.
Many have argued that after the liberalization of the education system, LDC is just a money-making venture eaten up by traditionalism and assimilation of the British common law.
I think it was brought by those post-colonial lawyers who thought there would be few. Liberalizing legal education. Why do you have a monopoly that one person is going to certify you to practice?
But there's a money play in these things. I mean, why do you introduce pre-entries and then make people pay for them? If you lecture at, let me say, LDC, and it's a full-time job there, would you desire that LDC is taken away and then universities are given the power to create their own law development centers to train advocates? No, of course you wouldn't, because that's where you're earning from.
With this, some lawyers took radical decisions not to attend LDC and hardly regret the decision.
So around 2018, that's when the whole cyber law initiative thing is picking up. Everywhere, flying out, meeting so-and-so, being named 30 young people under 30 by Google and Microsoft. So I was doing a lot, and it opened up my eyes to see that actually, I mean, education is not for you to prove that you can acquire as many papers as possible, qualifications, but it's for you to have impact in your world and change your world. And if at the point where I was already changing my world, I was willing to do the same thing to be able to have an impact on my world and an impact on my generation. I mean, I wouldn't pass an opportunity to be in the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna over having to go for 9 months at LDC. I wouldn't, you know.
While LDC is crying foul over the overwhelming numbers of applicants, some lawyers describe the entry process of admission at LDC as being selfish, characterized with monopoly at the center, and awarding themselves all the powers to determine who passes or not.
If I go to Makerere Law School, why don't I leave that law school with a full package? Where to practice? Why do I wear a gown and then they tell me, but after that gown you cannot do anything? There's like a smaller place which will teach you 9 months after studying 4 years.
You want to churn out the quality of lawyers. Let the free market of demand and supply isolate the good ones from the bad ones. Because it will. It will.
The market shall sort me out. Because National Council for Education approves universities. If a university is not featured proper to teach, to train a lawyer, then it should be closed. Now, if it's not closed and people come to the field, people will select that, no, this kid, this student. The market will sort you out. But I don't think this is essential.
With the question of LDC standing the times, the director LDC encourages more public discourse on this topic, as well as petitioning for the removal of LDC for those that are interested in the matter.
The critics of LDC should engage in that discussion. They should get involved in that discussion. The stakeholders, the lawyers, the students should all be part of that discussion, and we come up with a solution together.
Regardless of LDC, some of the lawyers have decided to venture into other spaces that require a law degree, while others have followed their passion in other professions. For many Ugandans, LDC shouldn't determine who is a credible lawyer, since the market area is the litmus paper. Instead, more emphasis should be put on clerkship for the lawyers to practice what they're taught. Sharon Chondusha, UBC TV.